Yes, Your Honor.
So now calling a case of Jordan Street versus Reese Taylor, cause number 18 CV 001-20. Parties, counsel, you may proceed with your pretrial argument. Plaintiff.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Would you like our formal introductions for the record?
Sure.
My name is Adam Leidig, last name spelled Leydig, and I represent the plaintiff, Jordan Street, as well as the estate of Rory Street, the decedent in today's case.
Okay. Any pretrial matters you'd like to take up?
Yes, Your Honor. Before we do any motions in limine, we have a few housekeeping matters I'd like to attend to.
Sure.
Your Honor, may we assume that all witnesses have been sworn prior to testifying in today's case?
Absolutely.
And Your Honor, may the exhibits that have been pre-marked based on the record, may they retain their original markings?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, after motions are completed, if there is a pretrial ruling that affects any testimony, may we have a brief moment to tell the witnesses your pretrial rulings to make sure they aren't violated?
Sure.
And Your Honor, may we invoke the rule?
Sure.
And may we have the correct pronunciation of your last name, Your Honor? Is it Gardner?
Yeah, Gardner.
Okay. And with that, Your Honor, ready to proceed to motions in limine.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Your Honor, if I may invite the court's attention to the pretrial order that Your Honor has authored with number 3.
Okay.
Exhibits 16, 17, 18, 19, and 21 have been pre-admitted into evidence.
Okay. And I'm looking at a copy of it just so you're tracking.
Okay. And with that, Your Honor, we're ready to proceed to actual substantive motions. We move to exclude any conclusions that Jess Merriweather made during her deposition. Your Honor, this case is about a wrongful death where a high school soccer player was being run on a field in 105 degrees in Waco heat, where he collapsed, she collapsed, suffered from heat stroke, and unfortunately died on that day. Now, in Miss Merriweather's deposition, she was asked to give almost an expert opinion about how the coach was running the practice and whether it was appropriate. Your Honor, because she doesn't have the sufficient knowledge, training, experience, or any methodologies that soccer coaches should have, she should be excluded from giving this opinion, Your Honor.
Okay, response?
Yes, Your Honor. Philip Munkoth, on behalf of the defendant in today's case, we would ask that this motion be denied. Specifically, Your Honor, this case is about whether or not Coach Taylor, the coach of the decedent Rory Street, was negligent in his conducting of a coaching exercise on September 7th of 2018. And a part of this is whether or not the unfortunate tragic death of Rory Street was foreseeable by the coach at that time. Now, to the testimony in question here, Ms. Merriweather is a trainer, a professional trainer who has had education in that background and who has had worked, well, not just with Coach Taylor, but at several other teams at Waco High School. They have presided over, they have been a part of several competitions and was even present on the day in question. And the deposition itself lays out several qualifications that this witness would have that would allow them to make the rationally based perception that the training regimen that was happening on that day was no different than any other day and would have been a reasonable training exercise to go through.
Reply to that.
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
You have any reply? You want to say anything else? I'll let you have the last word on your motion.
Yes, Your Honor. Again, we understand that Ms. Merriweather may have the formal training as she went to an undergraduate institution, and she may have been present at soccer practices, but she never attended any clinics, had any formal training as a soccer coach. And additionally, Your Honor, based upon the deposition and all the information we have in the record, no information exists as to the particular methodologies or other practices that other soccer coaches like to reasonably apply, which is required under 702. Because of this, Your Honor, any opinion like this is an improper opinion.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make my ruling real quick on this one. I'll deny the motion insofar as, I won't let, we don't need a motion in limine insofar as she's just testifying to, what she was familiar with in the course and scope of her experience. I think that's perfectly permissible. insofar as, the testimony that you're going to be reading into the record is something akin to all soccer coaches do blank, or, this is the routine course for soccer practices, I think that's probably going to be out of the scope of her knowledge, so long as the statements that you're reading are qualified, though, with something like, in my training or something like that, because as we said, she didn't go to school. I think that's perfectly permissible to hear, because she does have experience. And, with respect to the methodology stuff, I mean, that's much more limited to, actual scientific testimony, right? We've got, slightly different cases than when we're talking about expert testimony with respect to like non-scientific experts. And I think that she can testify to those things. So with those two goalposts in mind, I'll deny the motion in limine in full, I guess. And, just with the caution that if he starts heading that direction, feel free to object if, we're starting to toe the scientific expert line, so to speak.
Yes, Your Honor.
Anything further from plaintiff in pretrial?
Yes, Your Honor. During a pretrial conference, defense counsel and I met, and we talked about how we both agree and are willing to stipulate that Exhibit 3 should be entered into evidence. Your Honor, Exhibit 3 is a picture of Rory Street, the decedent in today's case.
Okay. I've got no problem with that. And y'all can publish it as you'd like now that it's admitted. So Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. And with that, the plaintiff is ready to proceed to opening statements.
Okie dokie. All right. Defendant, 5 minutes for your pretrial stuff.
Yes, Your Honor. Philip Minecoth again for the defendant. Just a couple of quick housekeeping matters. You mentioned earlier that evidence that has been admitted can go ahead and be published without asking for permission. I just want to make sure that that includes some of the pre-admitted evidence that has already been entered today. Do you need us to address that before we throw it up?
No, I think for clarity, you probably want to say where you're going, right? Just so that way people that are following along at home, they can pull up those exhibits. But other than that, no, you're free to throw it up if it's pre-admitted. I want y'all to have the freedom to structure your speaking time as you feel fit.
Certainly, Your Honor. And then we did have one substantive motion to bring before the court today. I'm happy to announce that at the pretrial meeting with Mr. Leidig, we were able to come to a stipulation that there will be no testimony regarding a subsequent remedial measure of implementing tents and Gatorade at all of the soccer field practices that happened after the unfortunate passing of Rory Street.
Okay, so y'all did come to an agreement. Is that what you said, that won't come up? Okay.
That is my understanding.
Great. Anything else?
And with that, the defense has no further housekeeping or substantive motions.
All right. Well, with that, then we will move to the cases in chief. Let me get the time set. All right. Plaintiff, the floor is yours, and I'll start the 55-minute timer when you begin.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Opposing counsel, Your Honor, may it please the court. Good afternoon. Today, we're going to learn how far a high school soccer coach will go to make sure that everybody knows that he's the best coach in the county. How many rules he's willing to break. How many lines he's willing to cross. How many lives he's willing to risk. And unfortunately, on September 7th of 2018, the defendant's desire to win at all costs cost the life of a young woman. Her name was Rory Street. She was 18 years old when she died on the soccer field that she loved playing on. Now, in today's case, the plaintiff has the burden of proof. We must prove to you by a greater weight of the evidence that on September 7th of 2018, the defendant, Reese Taylor, acted in a negligent fashion that caused the death of Rory Street. We'll be able to prove this to you by establishing what happened before, during, and after Coach Street took to the field and lost his temper. And Your Honor, when he lost that temper, it resulted in Rory Street's death. But before we discuss that any further, I'd like to introduce you to Rory Street. Rory Street was born and raised right here in Waco. where at a very young age, she found something she really loved. That was the sport of soccer. Not only did she love it, but her parent loved it too. They'd play on the weekends together, and that was their bonding experience. The evidence will show that not only did Rory love soccer, she was good at it too. She was the star soccer player, the star forward of her high school team, with dreams to make it big, to go to college, to get some scholarships, and that's where she was headed after her senior year. She wanted to play in Division I soccer, and she was about to achieve that dream. But while there's good things with her hobby, there was unfortunately bad things with her hobby. And the evidence will show the one bad thing that she encountered with her hobby. And that was the defendant, Reese Taylor. Someone who we're going to learn today coached with an iron fist, yelling at players, demanding more. And while Coach Taylor believes it's achieving their max potential, we're going to learn today how Coach achieves those means. How Coach Taylor believes that the ends of winning over and over again justify the means and what he is willing to risk. We're going to learn all about that from Aubrey Saracen, one of Rory's teammates and someone who is also on the coach's team. When Miss Saracen takes the stand today, she's going to tell you about what she observed about Coach Taylor's actions and how he wouldn't take no for an answer, while he didn't like complaining, and how he wanted to win at all costs. We're also going to learn today that on September 7th of 2018, Miss Saracen was running the infamous Burma Road, a tool that Coach Taylor loved to implement to punish his students and to making sure they performed to his standards. The Burma Road consists of sprinting, dribbling a ball, and then bear crawling for 60 yards in the sweltering heat. The evidence will show that Coach Taylor never even told you how many bear crawls you had to do, but you were just supposed to crawl until he was satisfied. We're also going to learn on that fateful day that Rory had told Miss Saracen that she was feeling funny, that her chest hurt. But yet she continued under the pointed finger of Coach Taylor. Unfortunately, the torture didn't stop there. We're going to learn today that after Coach Taylor still wasn't satisfied with ordering Rory to do the march, that the coach got creative. That he wanted to punish Rory in a new way through something called a slide tackle. And while no one's going to disagree in today's case, the slide tackle is part of the game of soccer. What happens and how Coach Taylor set it up is that drill became a death sentence. On one end of the field, he set Rory with a ball. And then 10 yards on the other end of the field, he set 15 of Rory's teammates, lined in a row, similar to a firing squad, with one goal and one goal only. Charge Rory, take the ball, slide tackle her. And so with his orders barked, the whistle blew, and the first player took off, slide tackling Rory to the ground. Unfortunately, Rory had trouble getting to her feet. But that's when Coach Taylor wanted to help in his own way. So he marched into the field, approached Rory on the ground, grabbed her by her jersey, and put her on her feet. And without saying another word, blew the whistle again and again and again. Until the 15th time that he blew the whistle, Rory went down. But unfortunately, she never got up. She died on that field right after the defendant blew that whistle. And because of these actions and the evidence we will see in today's case and the testimony we will hear, I ask that you find the defendant, Reese Taylor, liable for the wrongful death of 18-year-old Rory Street. Thank you.
All right, you have 48-12 remaining. Okay. Defense, you're opening whenever you're ready. 55 minutes, okay?
Out of nowhere. That's how Rory's best friend and close teammate described her sudden collapse during drills at soccer practice at Waco High. Out of nowhere. The tough as nails soccer star whose ability and athleticism far outpaced her classmates collapsed out of nowhere. Not after screams and calls for help, not after obvious symptoms. Rory's best friend was caught off guard, just like everyone else. You see, Texans are tough. And the athletes at Waco High School are no different. They fight through the summer heat to train, to be the best. They work hard and they compete. And Rory Street was special. See, Rory wasn't just tough. Rory was practically superhuman, an extremely gifted athlete with toughness to spare. Rory had been trained since he had grown up to fight and to never complain. So it was no surprise then that Rory didn't complain during practice on September 7th of 2018. Sure, it was hot. It was early September in Waco, and temperatures often get above 100 degrees. But just like the previous month, Rory didn't complain. Like her teammates, Rory was playing hard. Rory was working hard, and Rory was running Burma Road. Despite having a coach 20 yards away, Rory never said, "I don't feel well." Despite having a trainer on the sidelines, Rory never said, "Something isn't right." Most importantly, Rory never said, "I'm using cocaine." Coach Taylor had no reason to think anything was concerning that day. Other students had been running Burma Road. One had been doing it much longer than Rory, and no other students were having such problems. Water was always available, as you'll hear today, whenever the students would ask. And the trainer, Jess Merriweather, was right there to help when needed. But the expert eyes of an athletic trainer never saw anything was amiss. Coach Taylor never expected that a dangerous drug was running through the system of his star athlete. The cocaine was the cause of this tragedy. Today, Jordan Street has brought this lawsuit against Coach Reese Taylor, alleging that Coach Taylor was negligent in the way he ran his practice and that negligence caused the death of Rory Street. And our hearts go out to Jordan. No parent should suffer the tragedy of surviving their child. But today, that blame has been misplaced. And the plaintiff must prove to you by a preponderance of the evidence that Coach Taylor was the proximate cause. Coach Taylor's negligence was the proximate cause of Rory Street's death. This means that they must prove that a person using ordinary care would have foreseen Rory's death might reasonably result from an otherwise routine soccer practice. The evidence today, however, will not suggest that. The case today essentially boils down to three things: the substance, the symptoms, and the signs. So let's talk about each one of those. Let's start with the substance. You're going to read reports from a couple of experts today about what ultimately caused Rory's death. These reports are going to reference an autopsy of Rory, an autopsy which concluded that Rory died of sudden cardiac death. Now, for such a young and promising athlete, that is tragic. Caused by anything other than that cardiac arrest. During the course of the autopsy, there was cocaine identified in Rory Street's system. And that is literally a game changer. Spencer London, an expert in the field of toxicology, the field of how various substances interact in the body, is going to be one of the authors of that. Familiar with cocaine. Mr. London's report has already been admitted into evidence, along with his CV detailing 15 years as an expert in the field. And his report is clear that Rory's death was caused, at least in part, by this use of cocaine. So that takes us to the symptoms. The symptoms observed by fellow players and coaches are all consistent with cocaine use. And this illegal drug takes a heavy toll and terrible toll on the body, especially that body of an athlete engaged in a strenuous cardio workout. While his teammates were fine in otherwise routine practices, a dangerous drug was circulating through Rory's system. It was preventing her body from cooling itself the way it would normally do. It was causing a condition known as myocarditis. Myocarditis, as you will read in that report, is one of the physical symptoms associated with cocaine use. So that takes us to the signs. What we're looking for in this case is, would a person of ordinary prudence, like, see this coming and do something to stop it? Would he be able to see an otherwise routine practice, otherwise routine drills that everyone else was participating in, causing the tragic death of Rory Street? And the answer, as you will hear today, is that there weren't signs, and certainly not a sign that the coach would pick up on. Aubrey Spencer, a close friend and teammate of Rory, didn't notice anything from a few far running Burma Road. Neither did the team trainer who was there, as always. And unfortunately, Rory never told her coach she was in distress. Never asked for a water break, never demanded that any of these drills be stopped. Other than it being an off day in terms of passing the ball and scoring goals, it wasn't clear that anything was particularly off. It wasn't until his friend Aubrey was within a few feet running the Burma Road drill together that she even thought something looked not right. But even Aubrey didn't think that this required medical attention. Nobody called for help because nobody knew it would be necessary. This is an undeniable tragedy. It is not one Coach Taylor had the power to stop. No one did. No one saw this coming. It was out of nowhere. Because no one saw a star athlete who had otherwise had a stellar record was going to have trouble using cocaine. No one thought she needed help. And Coach Taylor was no different. End of trial, I'm going to review all the evidence we've heard and seen today. I'm going to ask you to find that Coach Taylor is not liable for the unforeseeable and tragic death of Rory Street. Thank you.
46:50 remaining. And I guess I'll just go ahead and say this. Philip, you cut out just very briefly a few times. I think everybody understood what you were saying. We didn't need to stop the whole proceeding. Just do be aware. I don't know, probably nothing you can do about it. If it goes for longer than a few seconds, I'll stop the timer and then resume once we hear you again. I'll point it out. Okay.
Certainly, Your Honor. Thank you very much. And please let me know if I need to repeat anything.
Of course. Yeah, I think it was all understandable. I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
All righty. Can't believe with that, it's case in chief time. So we've got 48 minutes and 12 seconds. Plaintiff, if you're ready to begin your case in chief.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Miss Aubrey Saracen to the stand. Miss Saracen, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Your Honor, may I proceed? Good afternoon, Miss Saracen. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Saracen.
Miss Saracen, where do you live?
I live here in Waco, Texas.
And what are you doing right now for a job?
I am just waiting to go to college in the summer. I'm sorry, in the fall.
Where are you thinking about going to college, Miss Saracen?
Rice University.
Okay. So tell us about your high school career.
In high school, I played soccer all throughout my high school career. I loved it. I played here at Waco High.
Did you know Rory when you played high school soccer with her?
Yeah, I've known her my whole life.
Oh, so you've known her before high school?
Yes.
You probably know Rory better than anyone here. Tell us about Rory.
Well, Rory and I grew up together. I mean, I went over to her house pretty much every day after school in elementary school, and we played soccer together, ever since I can remember, all the way from grade school through high school.
So when you started high school with Rory, what positions did you play?
I played center midfielder.
Do you know what position Rory played?
Yes, I'm drawing a blank right now. She played attack, or it's not attack in soccer, but
It's perfectly fine.
okay.
So when you were on the high school team, are you familiar with someone named Reese Taylor?
Yes,
Who is Reese Taylor?
that's our soccer coach.
How long were you ever an athlete under the defendant, Reese Taylor?
Yes, in high school I was.
Based on your observations, how was Reese Taylor as a coach?
He was pretty aggressive a lot of the time. He got angry at us a lot. He was really tough. Just like a really, really tough coach, I'd say.
I want to talk to you about some of the practices you'd run. Tell us about practices in high school.
Typical practice, we'd practice after school. So we'd start practice around 3:15 in the afternoon. Usually it's pretty hot in Texas in the fall. And we'd usually run scrimmages and do drills, things like that.
Was water available at practices for you and other teammates?
Yes.
When were you able to get water, to the best of your memory?
Usually we'd have at least one water break every practice.
On September 7th of 2018, do you have water available at practice?
Yes.
You said you took about one water break every practice. Did you take one on September 7th of 2018?
Yes, we did take one, and I could be misremembering how many we took. I think we took a lot during practices before September 7th as well. I'm sorry, I might have misstated that.
Okay. Well, what about on September 7th of 2018? Do you remember any water breaks on that day?
I don't really remember. I think we had one.
Okay. I'd like to talk to you more about that date. Were you at practice then?
Yes.
Was Rory at practice?
Yes.
Did you see Rory practice?
Yes.
What was Rory like at practice, to the best of your observation?
She was not doing well that day. She seemed like she was really struggling. She didn't look good. She didn't seem like she was herself.
You said she didn't look good. What did you observe?
Well, just into practice, kind of right off the bat, she didn't really look good. She looked like she was a little winded, and it was weird because she was a really good player. She just seemed off. I don't know.
Did you ever talk with Rory about how she seemed off?
I did. I asked her when we were running Burma Roads together. I asked her, are you okay? Because I could tell something wasn't right.
But wait, let's back up just for a second. You said Burma Road. What's Burma Road?
It was a punishment that coach would make us run if we weren't doing something right at practice.
And you said it's a punishment. What would this punishment entail?
For this punishment, Burma Road, it's basically a 30-yard sprint, and then 30 yards, you kick the ball and dribble the ball down to shoot at the end with an open goal, so there's no goalie. And then you have to sprint back the 60 yards that you just ran. And then you just repeat and repeat and repeat that process until the coach is satisfied with how we're doing.
Would coach ever tell you how many Burma Roads you had to run before you had to stop?
No, he just made us keep going until he was happy.
When you and Rory were running Burma Road that day, tell us about the weather to the best of your memory.
It was really hot that day, like scorching hot.
Did you notice anything about Rory's skin when you were running Burma Road?
Yeah, she was really pale, and she just didn't look good.
Did she ever talk about her medical condition to you during the running of Burma Road?
When I asked her, are you okay? All she said was that she was having pain in her chest and that she felt off.
What happened after she told you that she felt off and she had pain in her chest?
We just kept running because we didn't want to make coach more mad. We just didn't want to make anyone more mad at us after we were already being told to run these Burma roads.
Why would coach be more mad?
Well, if we complain, you know.
I got an objection, so just hold on here 1 second. Go ahead, Mr. Minkoff.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm simply objecting to speculation at this point. This student is not in the coach's head and would not be able to tell us exactly what would make coach angry and what wouldn't.
Have you heard, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor, Miss Saracen has been on the soccer team, and we've laid the foundation that she's been an athlete under the defendant for some time. Using her rationing-based perception, she can talk about how she wouldn't want to complain. And if I may make an informal offer of proof, this witness is going to testify how when they complained in the past, it was make coach more angry. And unfortunately, that led to the coach demanding them do even harder drills and other exercises. This is based on a rational perception.
Brief rebuttal, Mr. Minkoff. Got any?
Your Honor, a specific instance that this witness experienced where they voiced discomfort is one thing, but asking the witness to step into the head of coach, and we wouldn't complain on that day because that was sure to put him in a certain emotional state, I think is beyond the pale.
Okay, I'm gonna overrule the objection insofar as you're free to ask her what kinds of things would make him mad. Of course, if he starts veering into the territory of what in fact made him mad that day, even that to a degree, I guess, is sort of okay because she observed probably him getting angry and she could describe the course of events that she saw. Insofar as you start to ask questions about, how was he feeling? Of course, that's going to be improper. And so please raise the objection again if we get to that point, but I don't think we're there yet. So overrule for now.
Yes, sir. Ms. Saracen, would you like me to re-ask the question?
Yes, please.
Okay. Why wouldn't you complain to coach about certain conditions like we were just talking about?
Well, he'd get really mad at us, if we complained or seemed like we were complaining.
Has this happened in the past when you were an athlete under the defendant?
Yes.
Can you tell us, please, where Rory went after Burma Road? Did coach ever tell him to stop running, or her rather, to stop running?
Yeah, he yelled over while we were both running them together, and he yelled at Rory and said, stop lollygagging, like, get over here. And he was like, I'm going to show you just how not special you are, because he was thinking that she just felt like she was special for some reason, but really she was just struggling. And so he called her over to the other field and had her run this new drill that, we'd never done before.
What was this new drill you've never done before?
It was a slide tackling drill, which slide tackling we do in a game, we do in practice. It's not uncommon to slide tackle, but this new drill that we had to do was just Rory. She would have to be dribbling down the field, which is just like kicking the ball down the field. And then everyone on our team was lined up on the 15-yard line. And as she was moving forward with the ball, my teammates had to cut across the field and slide tackle her to try to get the ball away.
Approximately how many teammates were looking or staring at Rory during this drill?
Well, there's 20 of us on the team that had to do it, but we only got through about 15.
You said they would do a slide tackle drill. What's a slide tackle?
Oh, it's when an offensive player is, going down the field and the defense wants to take the ball away. So they essentially, slide on the ground to try to knock the ball away from the offensive player to try to get possession back of the ball. And a lot of times it can be pretty physical.
You said physical. How is it physical?
Well, oftentimes you're aiming for the person's feet, so they get caught up in your feet and they'll be tackled to the ground.
Did you see, during your observations, did you see Rory get tackled to the ground during this drill?
Yes, she was tackled to the ground every time I looked over and saw her.
And to be clear, how many times did you look over and see her get tackled?
It was about 15 times.
Where was the defendant during all this?
He was right next to Rory. He was, blowing the whistle and running the drill.
Did the defendant ever interact with Rory during this drill?
Yeah, he yelled at her and kept badgering her like he had been all practice about how bad she was performing. He just wouldn't loosen up on her. It was really harsh to watch.
During this time, did the defendant ever touch Rory?
One time he touched Rory, yes.
Tell us what you observed when the defendant touched Rory.
Well, she had fallen down from one of the slide tackles, which can be expected, but she was having a really hard time, like just getting back up. It seemed like her body just kind of gave out on her. And so coach went over to her and he grabbed her jersey and just yanked her back up to her feet and just told her to keep running the drill, even though she looked like she couldn't anymore.
And after the defendant grabbed Rory by the jersey, pulled her on her feet, to the best of your observation, what did the defendant do next?
He just had her keep running the drill and was yelling at her the same way he had been all practice.
You stated earlier that you only got through about 15 people. Ms. Saracen, I understand this may be hard, but what happened on that 15th tackle?
Well, on the 15th time, Rory never got back up. She fell down and she just started convulsing and shaking, and it really looked like she was having a seizure. And that was it. I mean, it was really, really sudden, and I was really scared.
Thank you, Ms. Saracen. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
38-10 left. Okay, 46:50, and I'm ready for you to redirect whenever you're ready, Mr. Meinkoff.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Saracen. I'd like to start by talking about some of your historical familiarity with Rory Street. Is that all right?
Yes.
All right. Now, prior to this tragedy, you and Rory were really close friends, right?
Yes.
You were teammates on the same soccer field.
Yes.
And historically, as Rory's friend, you've never known her to have ever taken any illicit substance.
Correct.
And it would surprise you to find out if she had taken a drug like cocaine.
Yes, very much.
In your opinion, that would be an unusual occurrence.
Yes.
Now, I'd like to talk about you and your teammates' practice routine generally. Practice.
Sorry, you just cut out. Could you repeat the question?
Meinkoff, the whole question, please.
Absolutely. I apologize for that. Practice season begins in about August, just a little before school starts, right?
Yes.
And it runs into September and October.
Yes.
So all the players are practicing during these months.
Yes.
And during these few months, it's not unusual, as you mentioned on direct, for temperatures to go above 100 degrees.
Correct.
And at these practices, as you mentioned, water is provided.
Yes.
And you mentioned on direct that during some of these more routine practices, you might have frequent water stops.
Yeah, it's essentially. Mm-hmm.
And on September 7th, you don't remember how many water breaks you took.
That's right. I don't remember exactly. I remember we probably took one.
All right. Now, there's also someone else present there, a trainer. Is that right?
Yes.
And this is someone who can provide medical help if you need it?
Yes.
Now, I'd like to talk to you about this drill, running Burma Road, as you called it. You mentioned that this is a disciplinary action that happens in these practices, right?
Yes.
This is not an infrequent occurrence.
No.
In fact, on September 7th, when you were running Burma Road, you don't remember why you had been assigned to run it.
No.
And you're aware also that this isn't just a tradition with Coach Taylor. This has been a part of Waco soccer for years.
Yes.
I want to ask you, you mentioned that at some point during that practice, Rory joined you on Burma Road. Is that right?
Yes.
And that was about 15 minutes into your running of Burma Road, right?
Correct.
And it was only when she's there about 2 feet away from you that you start noticing the paleness.
The paleness, yes, when she was up close, but I could kind of tell that she was struggling prior to that.
And at that point, you didn't go over to coach and mention that she looked unusual.
No.
And you didn't mention it to Miss Merriweather?
No.
All right. So I want to move on now. I want to ask you about interactions you had with your coach and with Miss Street during this practice. So after Miss Street's running Burma Road with you, she's taken, as you were mentioning on direct, for this slide tackle drill.
Yes.
Now, as you talked about earlier, slide tackles, that's a common part of the game of soccer.
Correct.
And during these slide tackles, you mentioned that at one point, Coach Taylor pulled Rory back up, right?
Yes.
But throughout that slide tackle, Rory never told anyone that she needed to stop.
No.
Rory never demanded that she have a break to go get water.
To my knowledge, no.
And you never mentioned anything to Coach Taylor about Rory needing to stop.
No.
And to your knowledge, none of your other teammates made it. He needed to stop.
All right, Mr. Meinkauf, if you can repeat that last question, you cut out again.
Thank you, Your Honor. I apologize for that.
Not a problem.
Ms. Saracen, to your knowledge, none of your other teammates reported to Coach Taylor that we need to stop.
No.
Now, it's at this point that Rory collapses, right?
Yes.
And as you mentioned on direct, this was very sudden.
Yes.
In that moment, it came out of nowhere.
In that moment, it seemed like it came out of nowhere.
Right. Now, I want to turn back to your relationship with Miss Street and about the events that occurred before practice that day. You and Rory attend the same school, right?
Yes.
Throughout that day, you never saw her ingest cocaine.
No.
Throughout practice, you had no reason to believe that Miss Street might have been using any sort of drug substance.
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
So you've got 4113 remaining. And now redirect from Mr. Leidig. And I apologize. I said that Mr. Meinkauf was redirecting. It's 5 p.m. The judge getting a little loopy right now. So let me get your time set. You've got 38. Is it 18 or 6? 18.
Okay.
1 second. Alrighty, I'm ready whenever you are, Mr. Leidig.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Oh, Ms. Saracen, Mr. Meinkauf asked you on cross-examination that you didn't go and tell Coach what you heard from Rory. Why didn't you?
Like I said, I was scared too. I thought he'd just make us keep running more and more, and I just wanted it to be over for Rory.
Thank you, Ms. Saracen. Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
3756 remaining. Anything else from this witness?
No, Your Honor. No further questions for this witness. We ask this witness be able to constructively step down.
Sure, you can be excused. All right, anything further for your case in chief, Mr. Leidig?
Yes, Your Honor. We have a few things from the case in chief. Specifically, we'd like to read portions of Jordan Street's deposition.
Sure.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready.
May I have my co-counsel? She read my mind. All right. So, Your Honor, inviting the court's attention to page 3 of Jordan Street's deposition.
Sure, and feel free to screen share if you'd like.
Okay. Tyler, would you like to throw that up for the court deposition?
And Tyler, you are silent right now.
I was mouthing, Your Honor. I apologize. Bad habit.
Thank you, Tyler. Inviting the court's attention to page 3 of the deposition, lines 20 to 24. Question: when did Rory start playing soccer?
Oh gosh, when she was little, 4 or 5 years old. I went and signed her up to get her started with just being out and being athletic and being around other kids. But she took right to it and never looked back. And before you knew it, we were,
Inviting the court's attention to page 4 of the record, lines 1 through 3.
spending weekends driving all over Texas to soccer tournaments. And the next 12 or so years were just kind of a blur. Soccer tournaments, soccer practices, soccer camps, soccer everything.
Inviting the court's attention to page 7 of Jordan Street's deposition, lines 8 through 12. Line 8, question. Did Rory regularly visit her pediatrician?
At least once a year for a physical.
Question. During any of those yearly physicals, were there any issues?
None. Rory had never had any serious medical issues, just normal kid stuff.
Inviting the court's attention to page 8 of the record, lines 9 through 13. Question. Are slide tackles violent?
They can be. I mean, it's soccer, so a lot of the injuries are pretend, acting. But anytime you're running full speed and you slide feet first at another player's legs, that can be a dangerous situation.
Your Honor, this concludes the reading of Jordan Street's deposition.
Anything further?
Yes, Your Honor. We also have what has been already entered into evidence as Exhibit 16. This is an expert opinion by Regan McConaughey, a medical doctor. We'd like to read portions of her report for you, Your Honor.
Sure.
Your Honor, if I may, the defense also intends to read in portions of the Street transcript. Would you prefer to do us now as sort of acting as a cross-examiner, or wait until our case in chief?
Let's wait until your case in chief.
Certainly, Your Honor.
Tyler, could you please post Exhibit 16 for the court on page 2? Oh, excellent. Thank you. Inviting the court's attention to the last paragraph on analysis. Aubrey Saracen described Rory Street was playing sloppy on the day in question. Once Rory Street was running Burma Road, Aubrey, inviting the court's attention to the 3rd page, Saracen described her as really struggling and unusually pale. According to Aubrey Saracen, at that point, Rory Street said that she was feeling funny and complained of chest pain. Moments later, when Coach Taylor had Rory line up for the slide tackling drill, Aubrey Saracen described Rory as really pale, like lifeless almost. Hands on her hips, breathing heavy. Finally, after the 15th slide tackle, Aubrey Saracen described Rory lying on the ground, groaning and convulsing. These symptoms are consistent with heat exhaustion and or heat stroke. Rory Street's pale skin, apparent weakness, potential dizziness, which is indicated by the fact that she felt funny and fell down on multiple occasions, fatigue, which is again indicated by continually falling down and struggling, potential abdominal pain, which is indicated by the groaning, and a rapid heartbeat, which is indicated by the chest pain, are all symptoms that are commonly associated with heat exhaustion and or heat stroke. Additionally, the description of Rory lying on the ground and convulsing is consistent with a seizure, which is a sign of heat stroke. Inviting the court down to the 5th paragraph, based on all the above, it is my opinion, within a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that Rory Street died as a result of heat exhaustion and or heat stroke on September 8th, 2018. It is also my opinion, within a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that Rory Street's death was not a result of cocaine use. Your Honor, this concludes the reading of Exhibit 16, and we rest our case in chief.
So you have 3252 remaining.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No problem. All right. Let me get you set up for your case in chief, Mr. Munkoff. Just 1 second. Okay, so you've got 4113. If you're ready to call your first witness or do whatever you'd like to do to start it off.
Yes, Your Honor. And briefly, right after the plaintiff is arrested, the defense would raise a Rule 50 motion for judgment as a matter of law, looking at the evidence in the light most favorable to the non-moving party. No reasonable jury could conclude that the plaintiff has met their burden by a preponderance of the evidence to prove that Coach Taylor had a duty could possibly have foreseen the tragic death of Rory Street resulting from this practice.
I'm not following there. What are you moving for a directed verdict on the duty element or on the foreseeability element?
Excuse me, Your Honor, I misspoke when duty came out of my mouth. I am moving on the foreseeability element.
Okay. Response, Mr. Lady?
Yes, Your Honor. Based upon the directed verdict rationale, we have met our burden of proof to be able to make our case. Your Honor, we heard testimony from Aubrey Saracen, who was there on the day that Rory Street unfortunately passed. And I understand that Mr. Meinkoff wants to say that it was unforeseeable that the defendant couldn't have known that Rory was going to die, but we heard evidence to the contrary. We heard that during that day, it was apparent that Rory's skin was pale and she complained of chest pains. But just on an observation, we also found that the defendant grabbed a hold of Rory, pulled her to her feet after she was struggling in the heat to get back after somebody was tackling her. And this happened 15 times, all under the direction and supervision of the defendant. Because of those facts, Your Honor, we've met our burden.
Brief rebuttal, Mr. Meinkoff. Very brief.
Your Honor, I would just rest on my previous argument.
The motion is denied.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense would like to read in portions of an unavailable witness's deposition, specifically Ms. Jess Merriweather. And I will be having my second chair read in the specific portions. And Mr. Olson, if you would please share screen this deposition.
Yep, of course.
And Your Honor, we have highlighted the portions that we intend to read. We provided a copy of this to opposing counsel prior to trial today. We just ask that the unhighlighted portions be treated as constructively. All right. Beginning on page 2, line 6. Good morning. Would you please state your name for the record?
Hello there. My name is Jess Merriweather.
Moving to page 2, line 13. How long have you lived in Waco?
Just a couple years now. I grew up in Houston, then I went to Texas A&M for undergrad, and then I got a master's degree in sports training from A&M as well. After that, I worked for a couple of years at another high school in College Station before I got the job at Waco High.
What was your job at Waco High?
I'm an athletic trainer, and I also teach health.
What is the job of an athletic trainer at a high school?
We have various teams and activities at the school that involve some level of physical activity and competition, everything from football to soccer to volleyball to cheerleading and drill team. As a trainer, I work with the students that participate in those activities to keep them healthy and in shape and to treat any injuries that they have.
Do you attend practice?
Yes. Depending on what time of the year it is, it may be football or soccer or something else, but there's always a trainer at any official practice for our various athletic teams.
How long have you been an athletic trainer?
About 2 years now.
Moving to page 3, line 13. Did you do any athletic training while you were at A&M?
That was the whole point of the program. I worked with football players, track athletes, basketball players, and more while completing my master's degree in sports training. So it isn't like the job at Waco High was the first time that I've ever done athletic training.
Page 4, line 4. Have you worked with Coach Taylor?
I have.
In what capacity?
As a trainer. So I've attended soccer practices and soccer games where Coach Taylor was the coach. I've worked with Coach Taylor in order to treat an injured player. And I've worked with Coach Taylor just overseeing the students during practices and games.
Page 4, line 20. How did you know Rory?
Well, she was a varsity soccer player, so I worked with her as a trainer for the varsity soccer team, just like any other player.
Page 5, line 20. You said that you worked with Rory as an athletic trainer. Did you interact with Rory in any other capacity?
Rory was in my health class that year, so I would see I would see her 3 days out of the week in health.
Page 6, line 11. Jess, I'm showing you what has been marked as Exhibit 12. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, that is a note I found in my health class one day after class ended.
Where did you find the note exactly?
It was just a couple of feet away from Rory's desk in a nearby aisle.
When did you find this note?
It was a week before Rory's death.
How did you find it?
I was just cleaning up my classroom after health class, the class that Rory was in, and I found the note on the floor. When I find notes, I usually open them and read them to see if there's anything that I need to be concerned about.
When you read this note, were you concerned?
Honestly, it didn't make much sense to me. I didn't know what it was talking about.
Did you tell anyone else about the note?
No, I just put it in my desk drawer and forgot about it until I heard that cocaine had been found in Rory's system. At that point, I turned it over to the principal.
Objection, Your Honor. May we be heard out constructively approach?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, opposing counsel was just talking about Exhibit 12 and not talking about anything specifically within Exhibit 12. But now we are going into the realm of an implicit assertion that the note was talking about cocaine. Your Honor, Exhibit 12 is not an evidence to the best of my memory and belief. And additionally, Your Honor, this actually goes for a speculation. So we object on both of those grounds.
Response.
Your Honor, it is my intention that this exhibit will be entered into evidence. There is a few more follow-up questions about handwriting recognition, and specifically this note is believed to have been written by Rory Street, who is the person who died, and it is referencing common terminology that a common juror would be aware of for cocaine.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, why don't we get it proved up and into evidence, because I think the point's pretty well taken, that if you're revealing the contents of something that's not in evidence by implication, we need to get it in first before we start talking about the contents. So my suggestion is let's get it in. If you want to revisit the depot and go over those questions after that point, that's perfectly fine by me.
Certainly, Your Honor. At this time, we would then move to enter Exhibit 12 into evidence.
Okay. Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, we object on the grounds of hearsay, Your Honor, and as well as the calls for speculation within the actual note itself.
Okay. Response.
Your Honor, this note would not be offered for the truth of the matter, rather that it provided an effect and a knowledge that was not disclosed to the principal about an illicit drug substance that Coach Taylor would have had no knowledge about.
Okay. Anything further from you? Sorry, plaintiff.
Yes, Your Honor. I understand that opposing counsel is attempting to backdoor this hearsay evidence by saying it's not offered for the truth. Then I'd object to relevance. If it's not being used to show whether or not Coach Taylor had knowledge that there was potential drugs in the system or what have you, and because it doesn't go to that, then it's an irrelevant document, Your Honor.
Response. Let's make this quick, but I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Certainly, Your Honor. The relevance of this document is that it shows that Miss Merriweather, the trainer, was aware of a potential drug use issue, but did not inform Coach Taylor, who was the person with whom we are wondering whether or not they had a reasonable force.
Is Miss Merriweather on the jury charge?
No, she's not, Your Honor.
Okay, so relevance point well taken. I mean, we're not going to, there's no permutation of this, right, where we attribute any guilt to her, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so you have any other way to get this in as an exception to hearsay that isn't just, it's not for the truth of the matter asserted?
Your Honor, at this time, I think I will simply move on.
Okay, so your objection is sustained then.
Yes, Your Honor. And just to be clear for the record, I know there was a little bit of a portion read by the witness. I'd ask that this be stricken from the record.
Okay. The jurors are instructed to stricken, and the jurors are instructed to ignore the evidence that was read with respect to the letter.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, you may continue.
Moving to page 8, line 8. Were you at practice the day Rory died?
Sorry, 1 second. I'm just going to pull it back up so I can read it.
Go ahead.
Page 8, line 8. I was.
Did you see Rory running Burma Road?
I saw Rory over on Burma Road, but I wasn't watching her closely.
Did you see Rory during the slide tackling drill?
Again, I saw that it was happening, and I certainly saw parts of it, but I didn't watch it closely.
What were you doing while all of this was going on?
I was taping another student's ankle about 40 yards away.
At any time, did you see Rory stumbling, faltering, or slowing down in any way that would have indicated she was in trouble?
No, not at all.
Was Rory sweating hard?
I mean, yes, but everyone was, including me. It was a really hot day.
Page 9, line 1. Did Rory ever say anything to you about feeling bad that day?
Nope, never said anything to me. And here's the thing, I'm there to take care of those players, and they know it. I'm kind of a combination trainer and guardian to the team, so they trust me, and I trust them to tell me if something is wrong or if they're hurting. Rory didn't say a word, and she would have. Rory was a tough kid, but she knew her limits, and she would have let me know, or coach know when she needed water.
Are players allowed to get water when they want it?
Yes, all they have to do is ask, even if we're not on a water break.
Page 9, line 21. Based on your knowledge and experience in the field of physical education and sports training, do you think Coach Taylor's means of disciplining Rory Street on the day in question were reasonable or appropriate? And Your Honor, I believe this to be the testimony that Mr. Leydig was concerned about during his motion in limine. Given the foundation that this witness has extensive knowledge in medical training and is there at every practice, I would ask that they be allowed to read in this portion of their answer.
Sure. I mean, he hasn't objected yet, so I'll wait until he objects, to make any sort of a ruling, right?
Certainly, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor, and we, Mr. Minkoff must have read my mind. I'm about to object. I was waiting for the actual portion to come out that'd be objectionable.
Okay.
Again, Your Honor, I apologize.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Again, Your Honor, we re-raise our objection that we raised in pre-trial. Opposing counsel has attempted to talk about a formal education and getting a degree, that somehow this athletic trainer is trained in the right principles and procedures and methodologies of a soccer coach. That foundation has not been laid. And furthermore, Your Honor, to almost give a 702 expert opinion that the defendant's actions were proper and reasonable on September 7th of 2018 is improper, Your Honor.
Okay. Response?
Your Honor, this witness has a master's degree in health training and has been working alongside coaches for the strict purpose of observing players and making sure that they are as healthy and in peak physical condition as possible. This witness should certainly be allowed to opine on whether or not a coach's tactics are reasonable conduct, given that wealth of knowledge.
Okay, so let's split the baby this way. I'm going to, overrule the objection, but I'll say, I'll instruct the jurors as follows. What you're about to hear is a bit of testimony that only relates to this witness's experience and her training. It isn't to be used for any sort of broader idea that this is the way that soccer coaching goes, or this is the way that coaching in general goes. It is just that in her training, in her experience, this was not surprising to her, and it's offered only for that limited purpose. So you may proceed.
Certainly, Your Honor.
Answer: I don't think they were unusual at all. Coach Taylor is a winning coach that pushes players, but Coach Taylor is also concerned about player safety. We talk about it all the time. So I would term Coach Taylor's conduct and approach to discipline as orthodox in every sense of the word.
No further readings for this witness.
You may call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, we would like to read in the portions of the transcript of Jordan Street.
You may do so.
And Mr. Olson, if you would please again display that for the courts. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
Moving to page 5, line 12. Did you push Rory to be an athlete?
I don't know if I would use the word push. I encouraged Rory to work hard at sports and at everything else in her life. I taught Rory never to show weakness and to never complain. I wanted her to be tough, to play through the pain, because that is what makes a champion. Rory was tough because I made her tough.
Page 6, line 4. Did you have to try to stay on top of Rory to make sure she was practicing and keeping up with exercising?
Not any more than any other parent of a teenager. Rory sometimes wanted to goof off instead of following Coach Taylor's non-practice exercise routines, and I would have to remind her of what soccer means for college and maybe a pro career.
Page 6, line 18. Was Rory a discipline problem?
No, not any more than any other kids that age. I mean, she was a little wild and liked to have fun, but she wasn't some hippie smoking dope behind the school or some party animal who stayed out all night. Rory got in trouble a few times, and I got called by the principal a few times, but it was just normal teenager stuff, being late to class, goofing around, or missing some homework assignments. I was confident that she would graduate and would go on to college. I know that.
Page 7, line 3. Do you believe that discipline is important for a kid?
Yes, 100% yes. You know, my granddaddy always said, spare the rod, spoil the child. And I believe in that. You can't let them get away with being lazy and entitled. You have to keep them in line.
Page 7, line 14. Did you go to Waco High?
Yes, I did. I'm a Lion through and through.
When you were at Waco High, did you play any sports?
I played soccer just like Rory, but we won a state championship while I was there.
Page 9, line 11. Did you have any part in Coach Taylor being hired?
Yes, I was instrumental in getting Coach Taylor hired. Wish I hadn't been, but I was.
Why did you want Coach Taylor?
We wanted a winning coach. I wanted Rory to be coached by a winner. That's what we wanted, and we thought that's what Coach Taylor and we thought that Coach Taylor was the right person for that job. Looking back now, it was obviously a huge mistake on my part.
No further readings.
Anything else?
Your Honor, we would now call to the stand Coach Taylor.
Coach Taylor? Coach Taylor, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry. I'm not clicking all the buttons.
Whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Coach Taylor. Would you please introduce yourself and spell your last name for our record?
Yes, I am Coach Reese Taylor. Everybody calls me Coach Taylor, and that's Taylor.
Coach Taylor, I understand you were the coach on duty the day that Rory Street passed away. Would you tell us about your involvement in that a little bit?
Yeah, I was the head coach, still am of Waco High. Coach in charge on that day, running practice, and that was the day, September 7th, and Rory passed away. And it's not something you'd ever expect to happen as a coach.
Coach Taylor, let's discuss your background a little bit and let everyone get to know you. You mentioned you're a coach at Waco High. How long have you been coaching there?
So I've been at Waco High for about 6 years now.
And before Waco, did you have any other coaching experience?
Yeah, so I've been coaching for about 26 years now total, various sports.
And what sort of training and education did you get prior to your coaching career?
So I have a degree in physical education from Texas A&M.
And what do you do to assure that you're keeping up to date on your coaching technique?
Yeah, so I go to coaching seminars and summits around the state of Texas, and participate in those, pick up on any of the new trends or coaching styles, and try to incorporate any new methods that I think would best communicate to the players in my team.
And since you started coaching at Waco, how has the team's success been?
We've been doing well. We've won our district 5 out of 6 years. Even won the conference once or twice, and made it all the way to the semifinals one time. So,
Coach Taylor, I want to turn now to the day of September 7th. What time did practice begin that day?
So practice typically began at 3:15, 3:30. That was right after last block of school, and just in the afternoons. Yeah.
Was Rory Street practicing on that day?
She was.
What do you remember about Rory's practice that day?
So that day specifically, she seemed to really be dogging it. Wasn't taking things seriously, missing, making sloppy passes, missing shots in the goal, and really just out of position a lot.
And how far away were you from Rory when you noticed this dogging it that you mentioned?
Well, I was on the sideline watching the practice, as coach would. But when she was messing up, I did, give her some constructive feedback. And so we were closer when I was talking to her.
And Mr. Taylor, would you recognize a picture of your soccer field?
Yes, I would.
All right, I'd like to turn your attention to Exhibit 10, and please let me know when you're looking at that.
Yeah, I've got it up.
You recognize Exhibit 10?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's a picture of the practice field.
Is it a fair and accurate depiction of what the practice field would have looked like around the practice on September 7th?
Yes, it is.
All right, at this time, we would like to enter into evidence Exhibit 10.
Any objection?
No objections to Exhibit 10, Your Honor.
It's admitted and you can publish it.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Now, Coach Taylor, tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here.
So this is the practice field right outside of the school. You got obviously there on the left-hand side, that's the goal. You can see the grass, the field there, the school in the background.
And about how many people are you supervising on this field when you're coaching?
So our team typically every year runs about 20 students, give or take.
And Coach, I want to get a feel for the scale we're talking about here. How far away are these players on the field from about where you're coaching at any general moment?
Well, so soccer field standard is 120 yards. So if you got a goal in each side, if I'm standing in the middle, players can be anywhere from 60 yards to my left or 60 yards to the right.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. We can take this photo down. Now, when you noticed Rory Street's performance was dogging, what did you try to do?
So, coach her. That's what a coach does. I was like, told her, out of position, missing passes, tried to give her some constructive criticism, some typical coaching. And she seemed to just really be blowing it off, ignoring me.
And so what did you do at that point?
After she wasn't taking to my coaching, I told her to run the Burma Road.
Now, Burma Road, we've heard a little bit about that already today. So I'm just going to ask you, had you sent any other students out to Burma Road that day?
Yes, Aubrey Saracen was also running the Burma Road on that specific day.
All right. And while these students are running Burma Road, where were you?
So the practice field is right next to Burma Road. So I've been standing on the sideline watching the players.
And did you notice anything unusual about Miss Street's appearance while she was running on Burma Road?
About her appearance, no, there didn't seem to be anything unusual about her appearance.
What about her performance?
Her performance seems to still be lacking. She's still, I know her potential. She's one of the best players I've ever coached, and she really didn't seem like she's putting her heart into it. Wasn't giving her all, wasn't sprinting as hard as I knew that she could and that she should have been doing.
And so what did you do after you noticed that she still wasn't giving it her all, as you mentioned?
So at that point, I had her come over to do a slide tackle drill.
And would you tell us a little bit about slide tackles? What's a slide tackle?
So slide tackle is a defensive maneuver that the player will do to steal the ball from the opposing side. And so one player is running at you, dribbling the ball. The idea is to slide in and to prevent them from dribbling past you and hopefully stop the ball, steal the ball, and turn over possession.
How many times did you run this drill before?
So this particular drill I'd not ever run before, but we had run, slide tackling happens in games. We haven't practiced it on a daily basis. So it's something we had practiced before, but never done this specific drill.
And what happened during that drill?
So the setup, I had Rory stand on one side and about 10 yards away, the rest of the team lined up. I had her Rory dribble the ball towards the other team one by one. They would come and try to slide tackle, steal the ball from her.
And how was Rory looking at this point?
It was a challenging drill, so she definitely was having a tough go at it, but not that she didn't look sick. She just looked like she was tired, like everybody else would, might be tired after practice.
At what point during this slide tackle drill did Rory ask for the drill to stop?
She never asked for it to stop.
At what point did any of her teammates say anything to you about her appearance?
Her teammates never mentioned anything about her appearance.
So what happened at the end of this slide tackle drill?
So after about the 15th player went, Rory collapsed to the ground and never got back up. Really out of the blue.
Prior to that collapse, when did you ever see Rory look as if she needed medical attention?
I never seen her looking like she needed medical attention before that.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Yeah, 22:03 left. Okay, and 32:52 for cross. Whenever you're ready.
Mr. Taylor, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Taylor.
Good afternoon.
I want to talk to you about something you said on direct examination. So during direct examination, you were talking about the scrimmage you were supervising, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And is it true you stated on direct examination that you were 60 yards away from the students during this time?
No, so as I was saying, if I was standing in the middle of the field, then the goalie on one side would be 60 yards. That's how far our soccer field is. And the other goalie would be 60 yards on the other side. So that's the maximum I would be away from any of the players in the field.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear of that. I'd like to talk to you actually about your coaching career. Now, you're no stranger to coaching soccer, are you?
I've been coaching for over 20 years.
Right, 6 of which were with Waco High, right?
Sure.
And you know it's important to be a good coach, right?
Yeah.
You know it's important to win.
Yeah.
That's what makes a good coach, right?
Winning, yeah.
But it's also important to take care of your players, right?
True.
You believe this wholeheartedly, don't you?
Yeah.
Because you said in your deposition that they aren't just players to you, they're actually like your own children, right?
It seems like a family to me.
Right. And when you're looking out for your family, you got to look out for their safety,
That's true.
their well-being,
Yes,
to protect them from injury,
absolutely.
to protect them from harm,
Yep.
to make sure that you're not putting them in harm's way, right?
Yeah.
Now, a portion of your coaching, you like to stay up to date, don't you?
Yeah, like I said.
You go to many coaching clinics.
That's correct.
And that's because you want the best and latest coaching techniques, right?
Yeah, stay informed.
Yeah. One of those coaching clinics was actually on June 5th of 2018. Do you remember the one I'm talking about?
Yes, sir. I believe I know the one you're talking about.
In this coaching clinic, they gave you a couple slides, didn't they?
There was a slideshow presentation, yeah.
And if I showed you a copy of those slides, you'd recognize it, right?
I would.
Oh, do you have Exhibit 11 in front of you?
As a matter of fact, I do.
Okay. Now, you're familiar with these slides, right?
I'm very familiar with the slides.
These slides were from the Texas High School Soccer Coaches Association, true?
Yes.
The annual coaches meeting.
Yes.
And to be clear, that was on June 5th of 2018?
I believe it's June 15th, yeah.
Or June 15th, I'm sorry. And these copies of these slides are a fair and accurate depiction of the slides you received on that day, right?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Your Honor, the plaintiff offers was been marked for identification as Exhibit 11 into evidence as Exhibit 11.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd object on hearsay grounds.
Okay, let's hear it.
Your Honor, these documents contain statements that would be used for the truth of the matter asserted. Specifically, I anticipate that there will be documents about the frequency with which breaks must be had or the provision of shade for players during their practices. And this would be used to imply that there was some form of legal requirement or standard that this coach was obligated to follow.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. It's our intention with Exhibit 11 not to offer it for truth of the matter purposes, but rather to show that Coach Taylor's knowledge prior to September 7th of 2018 and what he knew from the Texas High School Soccer Coaches Association. And if I make an informal offer of proof, he wanted to go to these clinics, the same one as we're talking about here, to stay up to date, to apply the best and latest knowledge to make sure that he was being a good soccer coach. Your Honor, this goes to his knowledge and his credibility as a soccer coach.
Okay, brief rebuttal on that.
Your Honor, my concern is that this will be used to argue that certain of these sentences include words like must and have to, and that this would provide some sort of liability for being reprimanded if these decisions were not followed.
Okay, so
Excuse me, sorry, Your Honor.
no, it's okay. So let's split the baby this way. So I'll sustain the objection insofar because I hear you saying things like best, right? Insofar as you're going to try to elicit testimony with this exhibit or offer this exhibit for the purposes of demonstrating that these, in fact, were the best practices for soccer coaching. Not going to allow you to do that. Please object again, and I'll sustain the objection insofar as you do try to do that. However, I'm going to overrule the objection insofar as the slides can't be offered at all. He's free to offer up the slides just merely to show that he had seen these slides before and he had read their content. Nothing more than that, though. That's all I'd like to see.
Certainly, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, to be clear, is Exhibit 11 entered into evidence? I understand the issue with the legal conclusions and things of that nature, but
Exhibit 11 is admitted solely for the purpose of illustrating Coach Taylor's knowledge of the contents of that slide. Insofar as you go into anything else, I'm going to allow him to object again, and I'll lean on this ruling that I already made that I'll sustain the objection insofar as you go into anything about whether or not this is best practice. Okay?
yes, Your Honor. I just want to make sure I wasn't violating any rules.
No, sir. All right, you're ready to go.
Tyler, could you publish the second page of the perfect. Thank you. Mr. Taylor, can you see that okay?
I can, yeah.
Okay. So you remember reading this, right?
Yeah.
Talk to you about the importances of breaks
Yes.
and temperatures, right?
Yep.
Tyler, could you turn to the third page? This slide says teaching tackling. This is about slide tackles, right?
That is.
And you remember reading this?
I do.
It was teaching you about the potential dangers that were involved in slide tackling, right?
Yeah.
That a slide tackle can cause serious injury to an opponent or a player themselves.
You can.
And this was before the practice on September 7th of 2018, true?
That's true.
Tyler, could you take that down, please? Thank you. Now, Mr. Taylor, throughout your time as a soccer coach, you'd agree with me that you like to win, right?
I don't know a good, successful coach that doesn't.
Exactly. So you want to be a successful coach.
Yeah.
It's all part of winning, right?
Winning is definitely nice.
But directly back to my question, like you just said, successful coaches are all a part of winning, right?
I'm not sure if I understand what you mean by all a part of winning.
I'm sorry that you said talking about successful coaches and winning is a part of that.
Oh, yes, I agree, yes.
My apologies. And so another portion of that is making sure you're being good with your players, right?
Sure, yeah.
You're pushing them to, as you like to call it, their max potential.
Absolutely.
Sometimes that involves a little tough love, doesn't it?
Sure.
Pushing them in the heat.
Yeah.
Making them run sprints.
Yes.
Making them run drills.
Yes.
But during this time, you always make sure to take care of your players when you have them running, right?
Yes, I do.
You always want to make sure you have breaks for them, right?
Yes.
Make sure they have water.
Yep.
I'd like to talk to you about September 7th of 2018. That was a normal practice for you, right?
Yeah, nothing out of the ordinary.
Practice started around 3:15 to 3:30, true?
That's correct.
And you started it purposely for that reason, right?
Yes, sir.
For conditioning, as you like to call it.
Yep.
Conditioning in the heat.
Yes.
During that day, it was a pretty hot day, wasn't it?
As most days are in the summer of Texas.
It was approximately 100 to 105.
I believe that's correct, yeah.
But you didn't know it on that day, did you?
No.
You didn't have a specific recollection of checking the weather before you called practice, right?
No, I did not.
And so you called practice around 3:30, and it was a typical 2-hour practice, right?
Correct.
But isn't it true you classified practices between 2 and 3 hours?
Yeah, I think so. That sounds right.
You can't tell us a specific recollection of when practice ended that day, right?
I can tell you exactly when it ended on that day. Yeah.
You can't tell us exactly when most practices end, right?
No.
But on that day, you saw Rory, right?
Yes.
And you saw something out of the ordinary with Rory, didn't you?
At which point in practice are you referring?
You know, the part where you thought that she was lollygagging, to use your words.
Oh, yeah. No, that was not typical Rory.
Right, that was out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
You thought something was off.
I thought she was being lazy.
And so you wanted to correct that, didn't you?
Yes.
So you told her to run Burma Road.
That's right.
And Burma Road's all about sprints.
Yep. It's part of it.
Dribbling.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I agree. Yes.
All about dribbling the ball.
Yes.
All about bear crawling for 60 yards back, right?
Correct.
And so you told Rory to go run Burma Road because she wasn't very good at practice, right?
Yes.
And after you told her that, she was running Burma Road with Miss Saracen. You remember this.
That's correct.
And you can't tell us exactly how many times Rory ran Burma Road, right?
No, I can't.
You can't remember telling Rory that she only had to run Burma Road once.
Yeah, I didn't tell her that.
No, you're the one that stopped her though, right?
Yes, I did.
When you yelled at her and because you thought she was, again, lollygag. True?
Correct.
So you called her back to the practice field.
Yep.
And again, it's still hot, right?
It hadn't cooled off at that point.
Is that a yes to my question? It's still hot?
Yes. That's what
And
I said.
again, she's still taking her time, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
This is, again, weird.
Yes.
It's out of the ordinary to see Rory acting like this.
Yeah, she wasn't playing all like 100%.
Exactly. So you wanted to rectify that, didn't you?
No.
So you invented a new drill for her, right?
Yeah.
A punishment.
It was a drill.
Right, the slide tackle drill.
That's correct.
The same slide tackle drill that we talked about where a player slides into another player.
Yeah, like I described earlier. Yeah.
The one that could cause serious injury.
Yes.
And so you had Rory standing on one end of the field,
Yep.
and you had 15 of her teammates staring at her, right?
Yeah.
And you instructed each one of those teammates to charge Rory and slide tackle her. True?
True.
Now, you know why you chose the slide tackle, right?
Yeah.
Because in your words, it's a hard tackle.
Yeah.
Lots of physical contact.
Yep. It's a challenging drill.
And you needed to show Rory that her attitude and her effort just wasn't appreciated.
Yep.
And so you sent the players to slide tackle Rory, right?
Did.
And when she got hit the first time, she fell to the ground.
Yes.
She had trouble getting back up, didn't she?
I believe so. Yeah.
And so you went over, you grabbed a hold of her and put her back on her feet, didn't you, Coach?
I don't think I grabbed her. No.
Are you denying that you grabbed a hold of Miss Street?
Yes,
Were you in the courtroom when Miss Saracen was testifying?
I was.
And you're aware that Miss Saracen saw you grab a hold of Rory and pull her to her feet?
I'm aware that's what she testified to. Yes.
And you're denying that, to be clear.
Yes.
And regardless, you sent 15 players towards Rory to slide tackle her, right?
That's correct.
And on the 15th player, you blew the whistle.
Yep.
The player charged Rory,
That's correct.
slide tackled her to the ground,
Yes.
but this time Rory didn't get up, did she?
She didn't. No.
She fell to the ground.
Yeah, she did.
She died on your field
Yeah, she did.
right after you blew that whistle.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
2202 remaining. Okay. 22:03 remaining for redirect if you'd like any. Mr. Minkoff.
Coach Taylor, you talked briefly on cross about your practice of pushing your athletes to their maximum potential. What do your athletes typically look like during this pushing?
They look sweaty. They look tired. I mean, this is soccer practice. It's meant to be. It's not like the easiest sport to play. It's a difficult activity outside in the heat of Texas in the middle of the summer at 3 or 4 in the afternoon.
And do you push them like this at every practice?
Yeah, I hope so.
And prior to collapsing on the ground, what did Rory look like during that practice on September 7th?
She looked sweaty and tired like everybody else, but nothing out of the ordinary. She didn't look sick or anything.
No further questions, Your Honor.
So that leaves you at 21:07. Anything further from this witness?
No, Your Honor. And at this time, the defense rests their case in chief.
Okie dokie. So we're ready to move into closing, as it sounds like. Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and I actually need a quick 5-minute recess. If second chairs or scoring judges need to use the bathroom, please turn on your camera. That way I can see that you're gone. We're going to start here at 6:05 at the latest. If everyone's back, we'll start sooner than that, okay?
Yeah, sure.
See you shortly. All right, so let's see. We've got 22:02, and I think everybody's here. So whenever you are ready to begin with closing, you may do so, and I'll start that timer.
Yes, Your Honor. And before I begin, may I request my remaining time for rebuttal?
Absolutely.
It should be 2 or 3 minutes. I'm not going to do anything too long.
No worries.
And may it please the court?
Yes.
Opposing counsel, Your Honor, good afternoon. It came out of nowhere. That's what Mr. Minkoff said during his opening argument. That Rory, on that day, that hot Waco day, when she collapsed, that it came out of nowhere. But Your Honor, now that you've heard the testimony, that you've seen the evidence, and you listened to Coach Taylor's idea of how to discipline his students and how to run his practices, Your Honor, that statement's simply untrue. Rory collapsing didn't come out of nowhere. It was inevitable. And unfortunately for that inevitability, Rory had to pay for that with her life. Now, Your Honor, we have the burden of proof in today's case. And we must prove to you by a greater weight of the evidence that on September 7th of 2018, Coach Taylor acted negligently. And through his negligent actions, he caused the death of 18-year-old Rory Street. And we've met this burden. We've met this burden by establishing what happened before, during, and after the coach lost his temper and took it out on Rory. And when we found that out, well, we found out what happened. What happened when a high school coach wants to be known as the best coach in the county. What rules he was willing to break. What lives he was willing to risk. What it cost to become the best. And in Coach Taylor's eyes, Rory Street's death was the cost of what he wanted. Now, much like Coach Taylor stacked teammates in front of Rory on September 7th of 2018, well, Mr. Minkoff actually stacked people in your way to try to hide the truth, to try to have you look at them to see that they were to blame. People like Aubrey Saracen, people like Jordan Street, like the trainer, Miss Merriweather, and even Rory herself. But Your Honor, when you look at the facts and you hear the testimony and you understand that it was nobody's duty of those 4 people to run practice, that it was the defendant's duty to run practice. It was the defendant's duty to take care of his players And it was that duty that was breached because of Coach Taylor's actions and Coach Taylor's actions alone. If Coach Taylor doesn't accept excuses, Coach Taylor doesn't get to make excuses. And let's talk about Aubrey Saracen. And you heard from her today, and she took the stand and told you about what she saw, what she observed, and what she heard. We heard that on September 7th of 2018, it was a hot day in Waco. And no one's going to contest that it would be a cold day there. But so hot, it was above 100 degrees. Scorching. And you heard how that affected the players. How Aubrey had to go run Burma Road. Now, as much as Mr. Meinkampf wants to talk about Burma Road and how it's a tradition, and it's been around since the 90s, well, tradition doesn't excuse torture. Because on that day, Coach Taylor wanted to torture those who he didn't think was performing to his standards. And so he ordered the Burma Road to run 30 yards, to dribble a ball 30 yards, and to bear crawl 60. But much like he testified during his direct and his cross, he'd never tell the players, you can get a water break. He never told the players, just do 3 and come back. He told the players, do them until I'm happy, and then I will bring you back. We saw that with Miss Saracen, and we unfortunately saw that with Rory Street. Now, during defense's case, they wanted to talk about, in the cross-examination of Miss Saracen, they wanted to talk about how Miss Saracen never warned the coach that what she'd heard, never told the athletic trainer that Rory was complaining of chest pains. But we heard today why she never did. Because she was scared. Because she didn't want to be perceived as complaining like it happened before. She didn't want to make Coach even angrier. So out of fear, she didn't say a thing. Opposing counsel also wanted to talk about the pressures that parents have. But yet again, this doesn't excuse Coach Taylor's interactions with her daughter. This doesn't excuse Coach Taylor's inability to understand when something's off with a player and that immediately attributing it to her dogging it, her being lazy, and not thinking twice of maybe something else is wrong. Maybe I should ask what's going on. And we can talk about maybes, but the fact of the matter is Coach Taylor never asked, even when he found something was wrong. But with Mrs. Street, they want to talk about how Rory had a discipline problem, how she was a bad kid. Maybe we're trying to build the idea that she somehow deserved this. Your Honor, that doesn't make sense. So Rory's had an issue, an attitude problem when she was a teenager. Most of us did. But does that mean that Coach Taylor gets to send a firing squad of teammates to slide tackle Rory in a serious physical injury over and over and over again until she doesn't get up? No, that's not an excuse. The third person that opposing counsel tried to put the blame on in today's case was Miss Merriweather, the athletic trainer. And we heard from Miss Merriweather how, well, the practices that Coach Taylor was doing were proper practices. But we talked about this during pretrial, and we talked about this in the middle of the case, that she can talk about to her training. But no foundation was laid that she attended soccer coaches' meetings, that she ever got a degree in being a soccer coach, that she ever was a soccer coach herself. No, that was Coach Taylor. Coach Taylor was the one going to these clinics. Coach Taylor was the one that was coaching for 20 years. Coach Taylor was the one who wanted to lead Waco High to wins, not the athletic trainer. And so yet again, the desire to push the blame on somebody else fails. Which brings us to the fourth person that opposing counsel tried to push the blame on, Rory herself. You heard opposing counsel talk about how Rory never warned anybody else, never told the athletic trainer, never told the coach, never told anyone else on the team. But as we heard from Ms. Saracen, what happens when you complain. You upset coach. And to this day, Your Honor, we will never know why Rory didn't tell coach that her chest was hurting, why her skin was so pale, why she was feeling funny. We'll never know because she died on Coach Taylor's field that day. And that is a tragedy. And we heard about Burma Road, when we heard about this punishment of the slide tackle over and over again, and how Coach Taylor took it upon himself, and he was witness grabbing a hold of Rory, yanking her to her feet and sending the next player over and over until the 15th player knocked Rory to the ground, but she didn't get up. Your Honor, it didn't come out of nowhere. This was a series of negligent events that Coach Taylor either witnessed and ignored or set in place by his own actions. And because of those negligent actions, Your Honor, we ask that you find the defendant liable for the wrongful death of Rory Street. Thank you.
12:45 remaining. Okay, Mr. Meinkoff, your microphone's still off. You've got 21 minutes and 7 seconds.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay. Out of nowhere. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of Rory's best friend and close teammate. You heard here today on direct, the person who probably knew Rory best out of everyone in this room. And her reaction to Rory's collapse that day was that it came out of nowhere. We heard that today also from Coach Taylor. Coach Taylor, who told you that he pushes his athletes to the limit. Soccer practice in Waco is often a sweaty and tiring affair. It's something he's been doing for 6 years. 6 years of coaching, of pushing, getting his team to win. Throughout those 6 years, he's used that Burma Road as many times as he knew how. This wasn't an uncommon occurrence. This was a practice that had been happening routinely. And the plaintiff wants you to believe that despite the lack of insane physical symptoms, that despite this being an otherwise routine practice, Coach Taylor was supposed to foresee that Rory was about to pass out and die, or that she had a substance in her body that might be aggravating those factors. Now, plaintiff discussed what happened before, during, and after this soccer practice. So I want to talk about what happened before that soccer practice. You have 2 expert reports in front of you that have been pre-admitted in a trial, both discussing how 60 nanograms of cocaine per milliliter were found in Rory's system. Before attending practice, she had ingested a dangerous drug, a drug that wreaks havoc on the body. Brings us to during. During this practice, as Rory's running the same drills that all of her fellow classmates are running, as Rory's running Burma Road along with her friend, this drug is playing a role in the system. You have Mr. London's expert report in front of you. Mr. Olson, if you would please pull that up. I'd like to direct attention to page 3 on the second paragraph, which talks about a condition called myocarditis, a constricting of the heart and blood vessels that makes it difficult or impossible for the body to regulate its own temperature. Rory didn't tell her friends that she was taking this drug. Rory didn't tell her coach. Rory didn't tell her parents. Rory didn't tell anyone. There was no way for Coach Taylor to be aware that this extra factor was playing a role during that practice. Thank you, Mr. Olson. You may put this down. Now, I want to be clear here. We called witnesses up to talk about what they perceived, what they saw in practice that day, not to shift the blame. but so that everyone could understand what was being seen on the field that day. We heard from Miss Saracen that it wasn't until she was within 2 feet of Rory that she noticed Rory was beginning to look flushed and pale. But even noticing that, she didn't tell anyone that this needed to stop the practice. She didn't tell anyone that this needed to end the practice. And the reason she didn't is because it didn't occur to her that Rory might be in serious medical health. We also heard from Coach Taylor that he's used to seeing his players in physically stressed conditions. This is a soccer practice in Waco. He'd been seeing these players push to their limits, working hard, playing hard, sweating, just as Rory was sweating. You've heard that Burma Road was used frequently. This had been used not just for Coach Taylor's 6 years in practice, but since the 90s. This had been a common theme, and while I completely agree, just because something is a practice doesn't justify torture, that's not what this was. This was a disciplinary step that had been used routinely. You never heard once today about it ever ending in something as serious as this. It's the same thing with the slide tackles. You saw those slides today discussing how slide tackles can result in knee injuries or hip injuries. You never saw any of those slides talking about causing heart damage. You never saw anyone mention that a slide tackle potential risk out of this might be that someone's heart would suddenly stop. Coach Taylor certainly didn't believe that that was going to be the end result. For all, this was his star player. This was someone who contributed to the team winning. And if, as Mr. Laydig says, all this guy wants to do is win, then why put this star player on the line? Just doesn't add up. This is not about blaming other people. This is about what was foreseeable. And it was not foreseeable for Coach Taylor to know that this star athlete who was running the same drills that had been run, running that same Burma Road that had been run, would suddenly collapse out of nowhere and tragically pass away. This death is a tragedy. Absolutely no one contests that. But it was not foreseeable, and it is not Coach Taylor who caused this death. It was an illegal and dangerous substance contained within the body of that star athlete, a substance that no one knew she was taking. Coach Taylor is not liable. Thank you.
All right, 12 minutes and 45 seconds for rebuttal.
I don't believe I'm going to be taking all that time, Your Honor.
Very merciful choice. Whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. Why put the star player on the line? And that's the question Mr. Meinkampf just asked. And today, through the evidence and testimony, we found out exactly why Coach Taylor did that. Why he put Rory Street, that star player, on the line. Because she was lollygagging. Because she wasn't performing to his expectations. Because he needed to show her that her attitude and her effort weren't acceptable. Because the fact of the matter is, when Rory Street may have been lollygagging, she stood in the way of the defendant's ultimate goal, winning. And when Coach Taylor pushed it too far on that hot Waco day by ordering the Burma Road in conjunction with the slide tackling, Coach Taylor signed Rory's fate away. And unfortunately, because of Coach Taylor's actions, Rory can't be here today to tell you why she didn't tell Coach how she was feeling. Because when Coach Taylor ordered that drill, It drove Rory to the ground. Find Coach Taylor liable for the actions that he caused, for the things that he could foresee, for the actions that he did. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take my ruling under advisement, and the court is now in recess. Scoring judges, if you can email your ballots in to the appropriate place, and if you can just hang out for a few minutes while we get those tabulated. Same thing for the competitors. Very good job, competitors. Really enjoyed it. That goes for second chairs as well. Awesome behind the scenes work. Hope y'all had fun. I know it's been a long day, but now it's time to maybe get a good meal in you and get some rest. So I will, I'm going to step off camera real quick just to check and see where we are with the tabbing. If anybody needs anything though, holler. Y'all should have my cell phone number too. So I'll be right back and we'll get out of here.